Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel, where today I'm going to walk you through how I plan to take every fight in the brand new Ordeal quest, which drops in just a few days. Now, as you might have already noticed, this here on screen isn't actually the Ordeal, and no, I didn't get early access to the quest. This is just the existing Grandmaster's Gauntlet quest. However, I did receive confirmation that the only difference between the two will be the rarity of the defenders. They'll all be 7-star rank 4s, and then the increased health pools and attack ratings. There's not going to be any other nodes, or links, or traps, or surprises, which means that the Grandmaster's Gauntlet is still very much a valid testing ground. So what I'm going to walk you through today is a full run of the Grandmaster's Gauntlet with a team of just 7-star champs, which is going to be a requirement for the Ordeal. Each of these fights is a solo, and since this is a CCP beta, I want to be transparent and say that I was able to restart a bunch of times without penalty, and you might notice inconsistent health pools between fights, etc. But the goal here is just to show you how to do each fight, not show off that I can get a solo in each fight. The last thing before we get started is that I just put out a video with a planning sheet that you can use for this quest, or for the Ordeal rather. There will be a link to it in the top right corner right now, and then there'll also be a link in the description below. Let's jump right in. Alright, let's start off with the very first fight, which is Dr. Doom, and the biggest thing that you want to know about Dr. Doom is that you really want to have an XL champ on your team if at all possible. So Dr. Doom has a pair of nodes on him, and the first one triggers glancing depending on the size of your champion. And then the second one, whenever you glance against him, it's going to reflect some of the damage back to you. So in this fight, XL size champs cannot glance, and so they basically avoid those nodes completely. Now, you can use a large champ if you want. It's definitely more difficult. Large champs can only use special attacks, intercepts, and heavy attacks. Any other attack, mediums or lights, those are going to glance. And with Bubble Shield also in play in this fight, you really can't afford to just parry in heavy with a lot of champs, because eventually your block proficiency is going to decay so badly that taking a blocked hit is going to do a lot of chip damage here. Now, I'm using Onslaught. Onslaught is obviously an XL champ. He is also really good for many fights in this quest. Unsurprisingly, he's one of the best champions in the game. Bubble Shield also means that you really need to know the decks for the special 2. The special 1 is going to be unblockable a lot. With Onslaught, his Organic Magnetism has a chance to disable that unblockable, so you might get around that. But you really, again, with Bubble Shield in play, you don't want to be blocking too many hits when it comes to Dr. Doom. You can see here we're, about 1/4 of the way through the fight, and I've only triggered like a handful of blocks. That's really the way you want to keep it here. Fire off the degen with Onslaught. That's going to be where the bulk of your damage comes from. Keep everything paused as long as possible with that extended pause, and you should be good to go. Now again, this is a shorter fight because this is only the Gauntlet, so you might need a couple cycles or just to keep his degens paused for longer, but the main strategy here is going to be the same. Alright, next up is TERRAX, and the goal in this fight is really to keep him in the rock field for as long as possible, because he can't use specials while he's in the rock field. There's no threat of special 3, and he does have an energized passive, so his combat power rate is going to be increased substantially. So with Onslaught, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get him to the wall as quickly as possible, and then from there I'm going to heavy spam him against the wall while I build up to 2 bars of power so that I can convert all those Neuroshocks to degen. You can see we're giving him so much power from the heavy attack with that energized buff or energized passive that he really can't do anything about it. And the energy damage that we're taking from the rock field isn't really that much. And plus we're healing up from the armor breaks, which is nice too. So we convert all his degens, and now from here we're basically just doing the same thing. You can see his rock field here has expired, so we're going to try and bait out a special, and then once he is back in the rock field after the special, again, we're just going to rinse and repeat, try and get him back to the wall and keep him pinned there with heavy attacks. Other options for this fight: Wong can solo, use that green spell to mitigate the energy damage. Sorcerer has really good energy resistance. Wiccan and Kushala can also do this fight quite easily as well. Alright, third fight is Vision. Vision has a node where he will use his special attacks in order, 1, 2, and 3, and if you are hit by any of them, including the special 3, it's an instant KO. So in this fight, you really want some form of taunt or indestructible to avoid that special 3 or tank it without dying. So I'm using Deathless She-Hulk here. Deathless She-Hulk has a form of pseudo-taunt built into her trauma debuffs, where the more you have on the defender, the more likely they are to use a special attack. And this will force him in this fight to use his special 1 repeatedly, rather than building up to a special 2 and then a special 3. In addition, Deathless She-Hulk also has access to the Wither on her special 2, which handles all of his power gain from his signature ability. So Deathless She-Hulk, OG She-Hulk, both very, very good options for this fight. Medusa I have listed there as the top alternate. She basically shuts off this entire fight. Shuts off the nodes, shuts off all of his power gain, and you can just like repeatedly light backdraft in the corner. Sparky has access to taunt, really, really good for this. Luke Cage has indestructible, and he can reverse the power gain with his exhaustions. And then Titania can tank the special 3 with the indestructible from her Haymaker. Alright, fourth fight is MODOK, and I really don't have the space on my team for like a good MODOK counter here, so we're basically just going to try and play around his auto block with Onslaught. Now MODOK has a node where every time you parry him, your parries are going to become less reliable because it'll place a passive disorient on you. So ideally here you want an auto block counter, of course, because MODOK is very annoying. His auto block is somewhat predictable, but he can definitely choose to punish you if you trigger it. So with Onslaught here, I'm basically, like I said a moment ago, just trying to play around the auto block. If you time your combos correctly, he will actually drop his block after the auto block, and like you can hit into it and then continue your combo, and he will drop his block and you can hit into him. So that's one option here if you don't have like an explicit auto block counter. Now, ideally, again, you want an auto block counter, so the alternate champs I have listed here, Medusa. I don't think I would chance doing the special 1 with Medusa. I would probably build up to a special 3 and activate her true accuracy that way. Atuma has true accuracy on his special 1. You can just build a bunch of those up and counter the auto block for the entire fight. Vox has access to Undermine, really, really good option for this fight. And if you have a duped Gwen pool, she can eventually turn off the auto block once you are above 50 hits in your combo. So again, really good option. But I have Onslaught on my team. I didn't really have space for a better MODOK counter, and so we just have to do it this way. That kind of like team sacrifice is going to be pretty common in this quest for you. You're not going to have a team that can counter every single fight in this quest, so you kind of have to pick and choose which fights you want a hard counter and which fights you feel like you can afford to just play around. And this was one where I really felt strongly about the latter here. So one really great thing about using Onslaught in this fight is that even if MODOK auto blocks your special 1, you still have a very high chance to apply those neuroshocks through his block. And you can also heavy counter his heavy attack, which I just demonstrated there. So I don't think I went for a special 2 or very many special 2s in this fight. So it definitely could be faster. But I feel like either way you play it, Onslaught is still a very good option for this fight, even if you don't have the auto block counter here. And that should be it. There we go. Alright, moving on to the first really annoying fight, and that is Spider-Ham. So Spider-Ham has total debuff immunity. He has the energized node, so you're going to be baiting specials out more frequently from him. He is immune to all forms of power manipulation, and he has the defensive node, which is definitely the worst part. So he is going to be much less cooperative when it comes to throwing special attacks than he is normally here. So the most important thing that you want on your team for this fight in particular is you really need an evade counter, and more specifically, you need an evade counter that does not rely on a debuff. So nobody with a slow debuff is going to work here because Spider-Ham is immune to debuff. So somebody with true focus like Serpent here, true accuracy, true strike is the only way to counter Spider-Ham's evade. Venom will also do it automatically if you have Venom. Now again, Serpent here, one of my favorite evade counters currently in the game. You fire off one special 1, you get access to that indefinite true focus buff, and then you've shut off the evade for the rest of the fight as long as you don't take a hit. Now, when it comes to baiting out specials from Spider-Ham, you can take one of 2 approaches, or do like a mixture of the 2, and they really both come with their pros and cons. So if you stick to baiting out only his special 1, the fight is going to take a lot longer, but it will be safer, because that taunt that he places on you with his special 1, it is going to keep your health topped up with willpower, but it is very potent, and it is really going to gimp your damage output while it's active. So you can see, like, when we fire off a special attack, when we have that taunt on us, the damage is much lower than it otherwise would be with Serpent. Now, the other option is to repeatedly push Spider-Ham to a special 2. This is the faster option for sure because it avoids the taunt, but you're going to be taking a lot more chip damage because of those pies that he throws, unless you know the full decks. I definitely don't, so I just block the special 2 normally. And then kind of option C is just to do a mixture of the two. So you can push him to special 2, take that chip damage from it, and then bait out a few special 1s, use that taunt debuff to kind of heal via willpower. So that's probably the overall best approach. But again, depending on your comfort level with this fight, your comfort level fighting Spider-Ham, you might want to choose a little bit differently. Some alternate options for this fight: Atuma, spam the special 1, get access to the true accuracy. Venom automatically counters the evade, but you won't have access to your bleeds, so you're kind of reliant on good buff RNG. Prowler, spam the special 1 to get that pursuit passive up, and then Professor X, once he hits a certain point of those charges, he counters evade as well, and is a really, really strong option for this fight. And down Ham goes. Alright, moving on to fight number 6, I think it is. It is Weapon X. This is basically a normal Weapon X fight with just a lot more healing. So a couple things you want to note here. If you don't have a heal block option for this fight, remember that he cannot regen any kind of red burst damage or any kind of damage over time. So it might make for a bit of a longer fight without a heal block champion, but there are definitely more options than just bringing a tech heal block champion like I'm doing here. So Omega Sentinel, I've used her for this fight I think every single time I've gone through Grandmaster's Gauntlet. She is just a fantastic champion, a really good tech option for other fights in this path as well. Easy access to heal block. You can keep the heal block paused for pretty much the entire fight. And once you fire off that special 2, the plasma debuffs that she places do a ton of damage. As you can see, we're ticking for about 7,000 damage per second here, and he's just going to completely melt. So other good options: Death Strike, really good. Regular buffed Sentinel, also excellent for this fight, to spam the special 1. Warlock, just keep your infection up. And then Shuri, her shocks can definitely out-damage his regen in this fight as well. But, again, it's just like a big Weapon X. Not really anything extra dangerous here other than the regen. Alright, next up we have what I think is one of the easiest fights in the content, and that is Thing. So Thing has a node called Oscillate, where he will switch between a Fury mode where he is extra dangerous and extra aggressive, and then he'll swap into an armor mode where he has a lot of armor and he will be more likely to just sit back and hold block and do nothing. And you just kind of have to manage these modes throughout the fight. His specials are also all going to be unblockable, but they're really easy to avoid if you're familiar with them. And then he has shifting immunity, bleed, and poison. He's already bleed immune, so the poison immunity you really don't need to worry about here. Now, any champ can do this fight if you know how to fight Thing. If you know how to manage his rock stacks, you can do this fight very, very easily. Otherwise, if you're not very good at fighting Thing, then bring a champion who has really good access to slow. That way you can avoid his rock stacks, or you can bring somebody with really good defensive ability accuracy reduction like Black Cat. She can do this fight really easily. But in general, anybody can do this fight if you know how to fight things. So I have Void on my team because, of course, I have Void on my team. I've fought many things in my day using Void across a variety of game modes. Very, very comfortable doing so. A little bit of a slower fight, obviously, with Void, but very, very safe. And I'm I have the rock stack, magic numbers memorized in my head, so I'm very, very, very comfortable doing this fight. Chances are, though, whoever you have on your team can do this fight. Looking at my planning sheet that I put out a couple days ago, I see that MSD is using OG She-Hulk. She is fantastic for this fight, has easy access to slow. And then I see Campo and Vega are both going to be using Deathless She-Hulk. I could have gone that route as well because she is on my team. And then I see Egg is going to be using Mr. Sinister, who again has really good access to those degens and can do a lot of damage very, very quickly. But again, I want to make sure that I emphasize here that pretty much anybody can do this fight. It's kind of like a freebie, so don't really feel like you need to plan specifically around this fight. If your choice is bringing a Thing counter or bringing a KORG counter, definitely plan for a KORG counter and just don't worry about this fight too much. If you need to practice managing the rock stacks, do so in a duel. If you have a Thing on your own roster, that is a really good way to get some practice against him. When he's in the defensive mode, you can hit his block to give him additional rock stacks. but again, just an overall very, very easy fight. Alright, next up is KORG, and KORG is probably the worst fight in this quest. So KORG has a node called Mixmaster, where you need to be alternating your attacks, otherwise he has a guaranteed chance to evade, or you can just bring an evade counter. Also has a node called Flux Dispersal, so every time you hit him, he gains 5% protection. If he gets to 20 stacks, you're doing no damage, and then you can reset that protection by doing a heavy attack. And then he finally has a node called Gauss Warp, where every time you hit him, he is going to increase his block penetration by 5%. You can see those kind of orange charge icons there. Now normally you can reset the Gauss Warp node by using a shock, but KORG is shock immune, so the idea here is that eventually as the more you hit him, the more danger it is to take a blocked hit from him, and you'll see that kind of come into play a little bit later here. So in this fight, the best option here is really somebody who has access to a passive stun on their parry. So a lot of mutants have this, Onslaught has it, Bishop has it, Negasonic has it. And that is going to guarantee that your parries are going to stick against him, which is going to make it much easier for you to reset the Flux Dispersal node, because if you don't heavy attack to reset that node periodically, you're just going to be doing no damage, and it's just really a pain in the butt. The passive stun will also enable you to more easily do like a light medium combo, which is going to get around Mixmaster. And again, I don't have an evade counter here with Onslaught. The organic magnetism debuffs are going to prevent some of it, but it's not going to be guaranteed, so I'm really trying to play into Mixmaster as much as possible here. Again, you need to know the special 1 decks, because taking those special 1 hits on the block is going to get more dangerous as the fight progresses. Just an all-around very, very annoying fight. Now, alternate options I have listed here. Again, Negasonic, really, really good. All of her stuff is passive. Passive stun, passive incinerates. Really strong option for KORG in general, and this KORG is no exception. Gentle is another really, really good option here. He has access to that Pursuit passive. You can force that by using a Rupture, I think, on your 4th light attack, and then if KORG shrugs it off, he will get that Pursuit passive. Bishop, also really strong here, has access to the passive stun if KORG shrugs it off, and North Star should also be excellent here as well. Alright, next up is Dragon Man, another relatively easy fight, very straightforward. So Dragon Man here has stun immunity, which means you cannot remove his power charge by parrying him. You need to have him use special attacks in order to consume the charge. So special 1, again, you want to block 1 hit of the special 1, that will remove the charge. He will automatically consume the power charge via his special 2. So the main thing that you really want in this fight is some form of power reversal, because with Aspect of Evolution, every time he fills a bar of power, it's going to increase his combat power rate, which means you're going to be able to land fewer hits before you're going to have to bait out like another special attack. So with Void here, once you get those Petrifies going, once you get Fear of the Void and the Petrifies going, his power charge will just start to reverse his power gain instead of increasing it. And ideally here, once you have the power reversal up, you really want to avoid removing the power charge, because you want to take advantage of him having less power here. So the danger in this fight really is that his power gain, his combat power rate, gets too out of control before you can kill him. So I'm not really sure how this fight is going to look in the Ordeal with the bigger health pool. It's definitely going to be more dangerous. I'll probably have to do a better job of, again, not removing the power charge from him and really relying on that power reversal here. So other good options for this fight, again, anybody with access to like a Wither or a Petrify. Leader is very good for this fight. Quicksilver has access to Withers when he dexes. Count Nefaria I think should work here. I think Egg is using Count Nefaria. Kushala I think should also work here as well, just in terms of like raw damage output. I think she should be pretty fine as well. But a very easy fight with Void or any type of like decent science champ with good power control should be able to get through this fight without a problem. Plus you'll be getting some willpower from that Ineptitude debuff, which is always nice too. Alright, we are halfway done. Let's move on to fight number 11, which is Black Panther. Now, big thing in this fight, he is going to start unblockable, so don't try and block or parry right away, because you will take a combo here. Now, he has Armored Assault, so anytime he gains an armor up, he is going to be unblockable. Now, since Black Panther was buffed, he doesn't have an armor up native in his kit anymore, so this fight is actually a little bit easier than it was previously. That being said, you still have the armor up as part of Arc Overload, so he will still be unblockable periodically throughout the fight. The bigger danger in this fight is still the Footloose node, so every time he uses a special attack, he is going to gain this Evade and Unstoppable buff for a little bit. So ideally you want somebody who can either control those buffs, either prevent them or remove them right away, or somebody with Slow, which will counteract both of those effects. Obviously, I don't have somebody on my team with access to Slow, so I'm going to stick with Serpent here. Serpent can counter the Evade, but not the Unstoppable. So what I'm trying to do here is basically keep him as far to his wall as possible, so that when he does throw a special attack, I have plenty of room to kind of wait out the Unstoppable and the Evade effects. And then I'm keeping one eye on that Arc Overload timer because I don't want to be block baiting heavy attacks to get my opening if he is about to go unblockable. So again, a lot of stuff to pay attention to in this fight, but I still think it's a bit easier than it was previously. Alright, let's touch on some of the alternate options I have listed for this fight. The first one is Purgatory, who is actually very, very good for this fight. So Purgatory has that Soul Neutralize, and once she gains 10 bars of power, the opponent is not going to be able to gain any buff. So that will cover the regen and the armor up from Arc Overload, which means he won't be able to be unblockable anymore, and it'll also prevent the Evade and the Unstoppable buffs from triggering too. And at that point, it really becomes like a, just a duel effectively against Black Panther. So Purgatory, really, really strong option for this fight if you have her. Similarly, but maybe not as effective, is Wiccan. If you can keep his Neutralize up, again, he'll be able to stop all of the buffs. It is not as easy to keep Wiccan's Neutralize up as it is with Purgatory, but if you have him and you don't have her, he can definitely work for this fight as well. Sorcerer Supreme, also very good option. She has access to Slow via her Purple Blessing, and she can have pretty good uptime, almost permanent uptime of the Slow. And then her Nullify field on the special one will take care of the regen and the armor up. North Star, really, really good. Again, has access to Slow. Really good damage, especially in Everest quests like this one. He should be able to plow through this Black Panther's health pool in the Ordeal without too many issues here. So with Serpent, a bit of a longer fight again because you're forced to wait out those effects every time he throws a special attack. You can see me, I'm just trying to block bait heavies, push him to the special 2 as much as possible, but all in all, still a pretty good option. Moving right along, we have another very easy fight with this Nightcrawler here. There's nothing really going on with the nodes here, except that he's going to have an increased chance to evade, but as long as you bring a non-AAR evade counter, you're going to be just fine here. So nobody with Slow is going to work here. You really need something like True Focus, True Accuracy, True Strike, things like that. Cold Snap will also work here. So again, Serpent really does well against this fight. You fire off the special one right away, you get that indefinite True Focus buff, and then you're turning off his evade for the rest of the fight, and there's really nothing else going on. As long as you don't get hit, that buff is never going to go away, and you'll just have him on lockdown for the rest of the fight here. Medusa also really good here. Just survive long enough to get your True Accuracy up via your Armor Shattered on your special 1. No, you could do just medium attacks and do special 1s, which can't be evaded. Iceman, as long as you keep up your Cold Snap debuff, he won't be able to evade. And then Prowler, another really good option here as well. Fire off the special 1 to get your Pursuit passive going, and he won't be able to evade. Really, any evade counter that doesn't rely on Slow is really going to be good here. And I think this special one pretty much finishes him off. So yeah, really, really easy fight. Any evade counter, you'll walk through this fight without any trouble at all. And that ended up being a very quick fight. Alright, moving on to the next fight, which is Spider-GWEN. Very similar fight, similar set of nodes here. The only big difference with Spider-GWEN is that you don't want to parry or stun her at all. Any damage that you deal to her while she is stunned is going to be reflected back to you. So in order to get your openings, you either need to bait heavy attacks or punish her special attacks. And similar to Nightcrawler, you want to use an evade counter here, but one that does not rely on ability accuracy reduction. So basically the same champ that you used for Nightcrawler, you can use for this fight, and just don't parry stun or anything. So obviously I'm going to be using Serpent here. I don't need to reiterate again why he works for this fight. So let's quickly talk through the alternates. Again, Venom, you might already have him on the team for Spider-Ham earlier. He doesn't work for Nightcrawler, but he will work here if you want to have him on your team. Medusa, again, very, very good here. Just get your true accuracy going and you're good to go. Odin, I just threw him in there because, again, he has easy access to true accuracy on his special 1, and he can keep it paused the closer you are to the defender. And then Attuma is a champion that I've mentioned a few times already in this video for various fights. He is also very good. He can also work for Nightcrawler. Even though he's at class disadvantage, those true accuracies are still going to prevent Nightcrawler's evade. So he can work for this, he can work for Nightcrawler, he can work for Spider-Ham as well. So if you need like a really good anti-evade option, Attuma is a really good option. Or Medusa would probably be, those two would probably be my top 2. Alright, moving on to the next fight, which is Domino. Domino has Power Shield and Matador, and it's the old Power Shield, so even dot effects that apply during special attacks are going to be magnified by that attack increase. So what you want to do here is just, every time she throws a special, you're going to gain a bar of power. So you really just want to bring like your best Domino counter. So anybody who's going to be immune to ability accuracy modification, specifically from mutants, is going to be fine here. Or you can just go for any champion that has like really big special attacks. Like you could use Serpent here if you wanted to. You're going to take some critical failure damage, but by and large, you know, he has so much damage that you'll be just fine. Same with like Onslaught. Onslaught would also do perfectly fine here. Now I have Omega Sentinel on the team from earlier with Weapon X. She is just a great Domino counter. Doesn't really have a way to counter the evade, so when she is lucky, she can't evade there like she just did. You just got to pay extra attention to it. But like once you get Omega Sentinel going and you fire off the special 2, the plasma damage is going to be amped up to 11 because of Power Shield. You can see she is melting away very quickly, and all we have to do is just continuously use light ending combos to keep stuff paused, and she'll be fine. Other options here, we mentioned Sentinel early in the video. He will be fine here too. The special 2 is going to absolutely melt her. Ultron will be fine here with the D-Gens. Mysterio, a pretty classic counter for Domino, should work here. Howard the Duck will also work as well. All right, moving on to MOJO. Really tricky fight. So every like 20 seconds or so, he's going to complete his current prompt. So at some point in the fight, no matter how much you play around his prompts, he's going to start gaining those followers and the subscribers. So ideally what you want to do here is have a buff immune or degen resistant champ. So I have at the top there, I have listed Spider-Ham, Titania, Spider-Man 2099, Hulk, all really good options. You may not have room for them on your team. I didn't really have room for any of those, so I went in here with Deathless She-Hulk. So the way that you want to play this fight with a champion who is not buff immune, who is not degen resistant, is you want to try and stay as close to him as possible. So to that end, you know, slow down your combos a little bit because you want as many of those stagger buffs, or stagger debuffs rather, on you as possible. And the reason you want that is so that when you trigger dexterity, or later in the fight, if he starts putting the hater buffs on you, they're all eaten by the stagger, and thus won't trigger the degen. Really important. If he starts getting the hater buffs on you, and then he starts triggering the degen, you're going to be in really big trouble. So again, just try and stay as close to him as possible. If he has the anti-life field, you can try avoid dexing. Right there, I didn't really do a good job. I went ahead and dexed the special 2 and triggered some degens on me. The special 1 is pretty easy to outrange without triggering dexterity, so I would recommend you stick to that. Alright, next up is I-Bomb. A couple of easy nodes here. First off, he has Sadist, and you have to be aware that the self-poisons that he puts on himself will trigger the Sadist node, so his attack rating is going to be significantly higher throughout the fight than what it displays at the start of the fight. Also, you don't want to bleed him. He'll send those bleed debuffs right back to you. Now with I-Bomb, of course, his main damage threat is poison, so a poison immune or poison resistant champ is really what you want to focus on here. However, if you use a poison immune champ like I'm doing here, every time you trigger some sort of immunity, he's going to place those power locks on you. So you're going to have very infrequent access to your special attacks. Now with somebody like Deathless She-Hulk, that doesn't really matter because a lot of her damage is going to come from those traumas, and she has the ability to place those traumas on the basic attacks, and then he will refresh them every time he uses a special. So this might be a little bit of a longer fight with Deathless She-Hulk or even OG She-Hulk, but both of them can do it quite easily. Now, if you're using a poison-resistant champ, like Omega Sentinel I have listed as an alternate here, you do need to be aware that although you won't be taking any of the poison damage, if you do stack enough poisons on yourself, there is a very real threat that he will put the Acid Burn passive on you. And if you get that, poison resistance doesn't cover that, and you will likely die from it. So one huge warning if you're going to use somebody like Omega Sentinel. But if you have a poison immune champ, just, work around the fact that you'll have limited special access and you'll be just fine. Overseer, really, really good here. Also an XL champ for Dr. Doom. She-Hulk I mentioned. Vox also really good here. And yeah, Deathless She-Hulk though, again, amazing champ. Makes this fight relatively easy. Plus you'll be healing from all the debuffs, so you might end up at a yellow bar. Alright, moving on, we have an Apocalypse here. And if you're using a robot for this fight, you need to be aware that you're going to have 60% reduced ability accuracy, unless they're immune to ability accuracy modification like Omega Sentinel is here. And in addition, if you're using a robot who is bleed immune rather than bleed resistant, you're going to get incinerated instead of bled. So if you're going to use somebody like Omega Sentinel here, you're fine because she's just resistant to bleed. Death Strike will work fine here as well. If you're using Ultron, though, you really want to have him as high sig as possible. Otherwise, you'll probably eventually melt from the incinerates. Now, the likelihood that you get bled is not too high. I think you have to take a heavy from him in order to get bled, so I might be overstating the danger here, but just something to be aware of. Also remember that if you die to Apocalypse, he's going to gain additional genetic code, and if he gets up to 4, you're not going to be able to take a first light from him, otherwise he'll stun you through his block. So if you die a couple times here, you're going to have to play the fight a little bit differently. Go for more intercepts, or try and reparry that light attack, because I don't think the stun triggers on a well-timed block. But, Omega Sentinel, again, just really, really good for so many of the mutant fights in this quest. Once you pop off those plasma debuffs, they just do so much damage, and he goes down really without a problem. Alright, next up is Sasquatch. In the original Gauntlet, this was a big roadblock fight because the regen that he gets at the end of his health bar is very, very strong. And in addition, he also has the recovery node, so the regen is even stronger than it would normally be. So once you start triggering that regen, he is going to gain net positive health from the hits that trigger it. Also has a node called Life Cycle. We don't really see this node very much. So you see that blue shield icon. Every time you knock him down, the shield will be disabled for a little bit, and every subsequent time you knock him down, the shield will be disabled for a little bit longer. And I forget what there's a cap on how long the cooldown is. But yeah, so you want to knock him down a lot during the fight because you really want that shield to be down as much as possible. And then what you need to do is get him close to dead. Knock him down to remove the shield, and then before the shield comes back, you need to deliver the killing blow. Because if he has the blue shield up while he gets to 0 health, he ends up healing 10% of his health back instantly. Now, in addition, he also has Hard Knock Life, so your parries are not going to work after a while if you have a bunch of those Disorient passes on you. And then he also has Power Snack, so every time you dex, he's going to be eating that precision buff and going to be gaining more power. So Void, I think, is probably a top 3 option at minimum for this fight. He counters the power gain from Power Snack, so you don't have to worry about that. And he makes the life cycle node at the end of the fight incredibly easy. You don't have to worry about Sasquatch's regen at all with Void. And then at the end of the fight, all you got to do is knock him down, and Void's direct damage will deliver the killing blow while the shield is down. Just makes it really, really easy. Other good options here, She-Hulk, excellent. Luke Cage is probably the hardest Sasquatch counter. He absolutely works here. Leader and Count Nefaria should also put in good work here. But you really want power and regen control for this fight. And down he goes. Alright, this is probably the most annoying fight for my team here. We have a Killmonger here with Polka Dot Power. So Polka Dot Power means that you need to apply a damage over time debuff, not a passive, a debuff, in order to gain any power in this fight. He also has Sharpened Claws, so every time you take a blocked hit from him, he's going to place 5 little bleeds on you. And then you can't use a robot for this fight unless they can handle shock debuffs. So Onslaught is okay for this fight because he has the bleed resistance, So the Sharpened Claws node isn't really going to harm him at all, and in fact he will net gain health from willpower. The problem with Onslaught in this fight is that he places a lot of debuffs, which fuels Killmonger's power from his Vibranium armor, and because all of his damaging effects are passives and not debuffs, you can see we aren't gaining any power in this fight, which means we really have no way of stacking a lot of Neuroshocks, and there's no chance that we get up to our special 2 to turn everything into degen. So with Onslaught, you really have to play this fight slowly and carefully. It's not a dangerous fight, but you really do need to play it carefully. Now, one thing that I would do differently if I had to play this fight again, or when I will play this fight again, is that I will do a better job of kind of alternating between full basic combos and pausing everything with the heavies, because I'm focusing too much on heavies in this fight, and it's good for keeping the Neuroshocks paused, but I'm not adding a lot of new Neuroshocks, which I would be doing with my basic combos. So if you're going to use Onslaught for this fight, I would recommend you kind of focusing on a more balanced approach between the heavies and the basic attacks. Another area where Onslaught kind of falls short in this fight is that he really doesn't have any way of turning off the reverb on Killmonger. So he doesn't have access to armor breaks. He does have some non-contact attacks, but by and large you are going to be triggering some of that damage back throughout the fight. The good news again is that the bleeds from Sharpened Claws are going to heal up a little bit of that. If you're running the Mr. Sinister relic, the bleed from that striker will also help you. So Onslaught is sort of sustainable in this fight. Unclear at the moment how it's going to be against a 7-star rank 4 Killmonger. Like I said, this is a slow fight. It's definitely going to be even slower against a rank 4, so just fair warning here. Now, once you get all of the Daunted debuffs up on Killmonger, the threat of his power gain from his armor is a lot less, because you won't really be applying new debuffs. I have the Resonate Mastery on. I probably should have turned that off. That's feeding into his power gain, but power gain is much more manageable once you have all the Daunted effects on him. Let's talk through some of the other options here. Namor, really good for this fight. He can regen a lot of the damage. He's not going to be triggering the reverb, and he applies bleeds and will have access to power gain. Omega Red, the bleeds from Sharpened Claws won't affect him, and that will feed into his death field. He should do a lot of good work here if you can fit an Omega Red on your team. Ultron, again, you want a high Sig Ultron, because instead of being bled, you're going to be getting those shocks on you, but otherwise he should be pretty good. Last option I have listed here is Howard the Duck, who is bleed immune without being a robot, won't have access to his special attacks. However, with a bunch of parry heavies, you get all those fury buffs, and all those armor breaks are really going to do a ton of damage, so he should be a fantastic option for this fight as well. If you don't have a really good damage over time option, your next best bet is anybody who can effectively deal with the reverb. So somebody with an armor break, and then you can just kind of play around the bleeds if possible. So again, a long fight here with Onslaught. Not my top choice, but definitely doable. Alright, we are moving on almost to the end here. We have a Void here. This is a classic set of nodes for Void, long distance relationship, so any node that gives extra debuffs on you is very dangerous when it comes to Void. Void also has Power Shield just like Domino did, so anybody who can really nuke him as quickly as possible is going to be your best option here. He also has Shifting Immunity, so Bleeders, Poison, Champs, not going to be as effective here as you otherwise would be. So my strategy here is basically just to continuously heavy him with a light parry, light, heavy to get the extended pause. And then from there, that's kind of keeping him away from me long enough where I'm not triggering a lot of the weakness debuffs from long distance relationship. Because if you let those debuffs get out of control, it's just this constant stream of damage on you. And when we talk about the Ordeal with a 7-star rank 4 Void as a defender, 1 or 2 debuffs is absolutely going to ruin your health. So you really need to manage long distance relationship and his combo based debuffs effectively in this fight. Just fire off a few specials and he should go down, but a very tricky fight. Alright, last path fight is Nick Fury here. Nick Fury has the Vigor node, so every so often he's going to be gaining a regen buff, which is just going to extend the fight a little bit longer. Now, he also has the Lionheart node, so you cannot reverse the regen, otherwise The regen will not be reversed. It's increased by like 300%. So hero reversal champs are really, really bad here. You can use the Despair Mastery to shut off the healing. You just can't reverse it. Now, he also has a very helpful node in kinetic transference, which says that every time he hits your block, he's going to gain a small amount of power, as you can see there. And this node is very helpful because it allows you to more easily push him to a special 2, which is, if you are used to fighting Nick Fury, it's really the strategy that you want to employ the most. You don't want him throwing his special 1, gaining more tactical charges, especially if that special 1 is going to be unblockable. The special 2 is much easier to deal with and punish, in my opinion. In addition, mutants are really ideal here because they will have an easier time managing his tactical charges. So with any other class, it's like 100% chance whenever you hit him to gain a tactical charge. But I think when you use a mutant, it's only like 25%. So the likelihood that he's going to gain enough charges to go unblockable is much, much lower when you're using a mutant. So again, Onslaught here kind of fits the bill, but really any other mutant here is going to work fine. You can also use pretty much any other champ. You don't have to use a mutant, but the threat of unblockable is just going to be there, and you need to be aware of it. But again, as long as you can more easily push him to a special 2, you should be fine. A couple of alternate options listed here. Dani Moonstar, really, really good for Nick Fury. She'll also cancel out his second life if you have her sig high enough. Mr. Sinister, really, really good. He can block the unblockable special 1. Negasonic, good for like every skill champ, and Nick Fury is no exception. Dust also very good for this fight as well. So second phase a little tricky, especially if you've triggered the unblockable here like I have. So you just kind of have to play it patient. Try and like hit into his block to bait out a heavy attack, or go for like a blind intercept, and then you'd be good to go. So the end of the fight could get a little dangerous like this, but by and large, it's pretty straightforward. As long as you can consistently block bait heavies and get him to that special 2, you'll be totally fine. I don't think I have anything else to say. This end of the fight here is slower than I recall, just because I couldn't gain enough tactical charges to get rid of the unblockable. Then I end up taking a combo there, but thankfully I'm immune to, or fully resistant to bleed, and it doesn't hurt me the way that it could have with somebody else here. So nailed a nice intercept. Going to go into the striker here, and then one more heavy into the special 1, and that should finish off Nick Fury. And now we head on to the final boss here. So the final boss is Nameless Thanos. He has got 3 different phases here, and if you bring a champion who has access to Wither, you can basically cheese the crap out of this fight. So Deathless She-Hulk, fantastic for this. Quicksilver, Spider-Man 2099, all 3 of them are very, very good for this fight. So the deal here is that Thanos' combat power rate is set to 0, and he only has like a steady stream of ability power, as you can see. So anybody with Wither who can turn off and or reverse this power gain can basically get around all of his special attacks in this fight, and the fight becomes an absolute piece of cake. So with Deathless She-Hulk, what I'm doing here is block baiting heavies so that he doesn't throw any of his special attacks. I think he throws this one, and that's the only special he throws for the rest of the fight here. So you see we have the 2 withers on him, and now he's not gaining any more power, which means we can essentially just keep comboing and do like light intercepts, heavy attack him in the corner, and build back up to our special 2 to refresh those withers. And the fight is basically on lockdown at this point. Now, normally, each phase has an associated effect that you need to wait out. Every time he uses a special attack, he'll gain this effect. So, like phase 1, he gets this like bleed armor where you can't hit into him. Phase 2, he will degen part of your health, which he's going to do right now, and you just need to wait it out for your health to come back. And again, you have to wait out like the evade effect there as well. But by and large, like if you're using somebody with Wither, the start of phase, just wait it out, and then you can go right back to applying those withers, and you have the fight once again on total lockdown. Now, the one caveat here is at the end of the fight, phase 3, where he gets Death Touch. So any blocked hit, any hit that you actually take is an instant KO. So very, very dangerous at the start here. You need to make sure that you don't let him touch you at all. Now, if you're playing this fight normally, this last phase here is the most annoying because He's going to only throw his special 3, and you need to intercept him in order to gain like a safeguard, which is that purple indestructible icon. And then, you know, you need to repeatedly intercept him in between worrying about his death touch. So yeah, it's pretty annoying. Again, if you can fit a Wither Champ on your team, you can see she just absolutely cheeses the crap out of this fight. So that's it for your Grandmaster's Gauntlet / Ordeal guide. Hope it was helpful to you. If it was, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and as always, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time.